In this video, I'm going to give you my review of the new Tecnifibre TF40 305. Now, biggest thing with Tecnifibre rackets, and you'll see this in pretty much a good majority of their lines, is going to be the head size. It does tend to stay pretty consistent. Head size, you're usually looking at a 98. So Tecnifibre does typically find itself more on the control-oriented line of rackets. The TF40 line is no exception to this. So you are looking at a racket a little bit more control-oriented, not as much spin, not as much power, but it will help you place your shot better onto wherever you want it to go on the other side of the court. Then with the string pattern, you do have the classic 16x19. Pretty standard setup. You're not really seeing anything very different here. This version, the TF40 305, it does also come in an 18x20 string pattern, which will be even more control. But this one is the 1619, so it's a little bit more spin friendly, a little bit more power friendly, and it's just a little bit easier to use overall. Then the unstrung weight, Tecnifibre does something a little bit different here. When they have all of the actual specs, they have it right here in the actual racket itself, but they will say is 10.75 ounces unstrung, or about the classic 305 grams, like it says in the name. So then by doing that math, you are at about 11.35 ounces to about 322, 323 grams strung. So it's not going to be the most lightweight racket. It is going to be a little bit heavier. So if you've never played with a racket that is up to the spec for, it's definitely something to be demoing first before you actually go out and just buy it. Especially because Tecnifibre, it's not really seen as extremely big in the market yet, I'd say. You usually have Wilson, Head, Babolat, and YONEX. Those are kind of like the top four. But with other players on the tour now, like Daniel Medvedev, you have Iga Swiatek. You also have, it is Bublik. I don't remember his first name off the top of my head. But with Tecnifibre, it's becoming more and more popular. It's becoming more and more prevalent. So it is something to look out for, especially if you're wanting to compare it to some of those frames from those other companies, like the Wilson Blade 98 16x19, the YONEX Percept 97, the Head Radical MP, the Babolat Pure Strike. The Tecnifibre is going to be a good comparison to all those just because of the specs it has here. The other spec that's going to be very interesting to know is going to be this one right here, is the stiffness. You're typically looking at a 64 in stiffness. And one thing that's interesting about this, especially with Tecnifibre, is that Tecnifibre is a foam-filled racket. So there's foam throughout the entirety of the racket, or it's put into specific parts. I don't remember exactly where it is, so I just said it's everywhere. But that foam is making this racket not necessarily more flexible, but it's a lot easier on your arm. So if you're prone to tennis elbow from, say, like your Wilson Blade or your Babolat Pure Strike, then by trying this Tecnifibre with the foam inside of it, it is going to be a little bit of an easier time on the arm because the foam is helping to get rid of some of that vibration and shock before it gets back into you, causing tennis elbow or wrist injuries. So something to note, and it's definitely something to try if you haven't before. And then, of course, you can probably guess just based off the setups, and if you've heard me talking about the rackets that I have been, the type of racket for this, you're looking at a control frame. Duh. And the one thing I'll say about the TF40 305 being a control frame, there's the TF40 305, there's the TF40 line, and then there's the T-Fight line from Tecnifibre. I would say that the TF40 line, this is going to be a more control-oriented racket line compared to the T-Fight. The T-Fight, in my opinion, tends to be a little bit more on the powerful side. It does tend to have a little bit more spin potential. The TF40 tends to be more just control, not as much just actual power to it, not as much spin to it. You do have to create a little bit more of that on your own, but this racket is going to help just bring that down a little, so that way you can make sure your shot's going in a lot easier than with the T-Fight line, in my opinion. And then finally, with the price tag here, because it is the newest one, it is, I believe, right now sitting at $259 brand new. So it is something to where, of course, I will always say to demo the racket first, because you don't want to be out $259 plus whatever sales tax, if you have sales taxes. It's just going to be a lot, and it's not worth just buying the racket, playing with it, finding out you absolutely hate the thing, and then you're stuck with it. It's not fun. If you have the chance, demo it. If not, if you know someone that has a Tecnifibre racket, see if you can borrow it before you actually go out and purchase it, just to make sure. Okay, cool. And then finally, the one last thing I noticed about the Tecnifibre, especially the TF40, is that from previous generations of Tecnifibre rackets, I'd always felt that the handle on them, the actual length of it, was just a little bit too small, especially if you were using a two-handed backhand. That's just something I had noticed because I had always seen the Tecnifibre rackets as more of a one-handed backhand racket line, just because of how they make the bevels, where the two on the outside are a little bit more pronounced. So you can sometimes find where you're at a little bit easier if you are using a one-handed backhand. However, with this new TF40 line, to me, it feels like they actually extended the handle compared to some of their previous versions, and now it's a lot easier to use with my two-handed backhand. So that was a nice little touch that I thought was interesting and very appreciated from the Tecnifibre team putting into the new TF40 lines. And besides that, that's pretty much all I got. So with that being said, if you liked the video, leave a like on it, comment down below any more questions you have about the TF40 or anything you may want to compare it to, as well as subscribe to the channel so we can grow this channel, get the information out there from the people that have it to the people that need it. There's a lot of misinformation in the tennis community, so I took it upon myself to make this channel so that we can get rid of that and enjoy the game of tennis that we all love so much more without having to risk injury from our gear. And as always, take care.